Have you ever noticed how quickly people change the moment you stop being easy to control? Why do their smiles fade, their words sharpen, their silence grow louder the second you start thinking for yourself? What if the real reason isn't about you being wrong, but about them losing their grip on you? There's a harsh truth that many people never realize. When someone can no longer control you, they don't just walk away. They often try to break you instead. Suddenly, they're not supportive. They're silent. They don't reason with you. They guilt trip you. They don't argue with logic. They twist your words, plant seeds of doubt, and make you question your decisions. But here's the thing, it's not about truth, and it's never been about fairness. It's about power. And Stoicism teaches us something crucial. Real strength isn't about gaining power over others. It's about refusing to let others have power over you. Now ask yourself, are you really free? Or are you still dancing to someone else's music, reacting to their subtle manipulations without even realizing it? Let me share a story with you. Adam was a man who refused to live by anyone else's script. He set firm boundaries, spoke his truth, and lived according to his own values. But instead of gaining admiration, he met resistance. Friends grew cold. Colleagues whispered behind his back. Family questioned his choices. Why? Because Adam refused to bend. And in doing so, he triggered something uncomfortable in others. His freedom exposed their control. Confused and isolated, Adam sought wisdom, and what he discovered changed everything. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. Standing tall often invites resistance, and why that's actually the ultimate test of real freedom. So stay until the end, because the final tactic they use, it's the most dangerous of all. Let's begin. Tactic. 1. They try to manipulate you. When someone realizes they can't control you, they don't just give up, they adapt. And their new weapon? Manipulation. It's not loud or aggressive. It's subtle, strategic, powerful. Some people thrive on controlling others. It gives them a sense of certainty, of superiority. But when you stand your ground, thinking independently, refusing to follow blindly, they shift their strategy. They won't try to force you. Instead, they'll try to make you force yourself. They guilt trip you. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? They flatter you. You're the only one I can count on. I don't know what I'd do without you. They play the victim. They twist your words. They create urgency, all to get you to doubt your instincts and give in. But none of this is about love or respect. It's about keeping you in check without making it obvious. And once you see this for what it is, their grip starts to loosen. As Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your shield. True power isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself. Because manipulators don't care about logic. They feed on reactions, guilt, fear, doubt. The moment you respond emotionally, they've already won. But what if you didn't respond the way they expected? What happens when you don't react? When you remain calm and refuse to play their game? Everything changes, because in the world of manipulation, your silence is not weakness, it's power. Think of manipulation like a silent chess match. Each word they say, each sigh, compliment, or guilt trip, it's all a carefully chosen move meant to put you in check. They want you to react, to defend, to justify, because the moment you do, you're back on their board, playing their game. But here's the twist. The most powerful player isn't the one who counters every move. It's the one who sees through the game and simply refuses to play. I remember someone in my life who had a habit of turning every situation in their favor. They were subtle, charming, always playing the victim when things didn't go their way. One day they asked me for a favor, something I wasn't comfortable doing. I politely declined. They paused. Then, with a disappointed sigh, said, "Wow, I thought we were closer than that." And there it was, that invisible pressure, that quiet dagger of guilt. For a moment I felt it, the urge to explain myself, to soften the blow, to prove I still cared. But then I stopped. Instead of getting defensive or over-explaining, I simply looked at them and said, "I know what you're doing." That one sentence broke the spell. Their expression changed instantly. Eyes widened, mouth stammered, a nervous laugh. They tried to brush it off, but it was too late. The power they once held over me had vanished, and from that moment on, they never tried to manipulate me again. So how do you protect yourself from manipulators? First, learn to recognize their tactics. If someone consistently makes you feel guilty, rushed, or responsible for their emotions, pause and ask, is this an honest request, or is this manipulation in disguise? Second, stay calm. Don't match their emotions. The less you react, the less control they have. And finally, refuse to play. You don't owe anyone a performance. You don't need to explain, argue, or convince. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply no. And then move on. Because at its core, manipulation only works if you participate. Once you stop engaging, their game falls apart. But what if the manipulation doesn't stop? What if it evolves into something more aggressive? When you stop reacting, you take away their only real weapon, your attention. By choosing not to explain yourself or take responsibility for their emotions, you quietly take back control. That's the essence of self-mastery. Stand your ground. Hold your center. Because at the end of the day, the only power they ever had was the power you gave them. Tactic number 2, they spread lies about you. What happens when they realize manipulation no longer works? They shift to something even lower. They begin to attack your name, not to your face, but behind your back. They twist stories, distort facts, spin entire narratives that never happened, all in an effort to turn others against you. Why? Because they've lost the ability to influence you directly. So instead, they go after something else, your reputation. And here's what you need to remember. This isn't about truth, it's about control. Weak people don't operate on honesty. They rely on gossip, exaggeration, and deceit. Their goal is to make you panic, to push you into reacting, to force you into defending yourself so you look unstable or emotional, because the moment you respond emotionally, they win. They've pulled you into their drama, into their game. But Stoic wisdom teaches us something powerful. Real strength lies in restraint. Imagine someone hurling mud at you. If you throw mud back, what happens? You both end up dirty, but if you stand firm, let the mud dry and brush it off, you stay clean. You walk away untarnished. That's exactly how lies work. The more you fight them, the more the mess spreads. But if you stay grounded, if you remain silent and composed, the lies begin to collapse under their own weight. Marcus Aurelius once said, If you are unaffected by what is said, you have already won. Let that sink in. When you stop caring about their words, you disarm them completely, because truth doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to fight. It simply is. It stands tall, calm, patient, and eternal. I remember when someone deliberately spread false rumors about me. At first, I wanted to fire back, to defend every detail, to prove my innocence. But then I paused. Instead of reacting, I stayed true to who I was. I let my actions speak louder than their lies. And over time, the difference became undeniable. People began to notice. The truth became clearer. And the one who spread the lies, they exposed themselves, because lies burn bright, but only for a moment. Truth, on the other hand, endures like stone. So how do you handle someone who smears your name? First, don't engage. The moment you argue with a lie, you give it oxygen. But what should you do instead? So, how do you respond to someone who spreads lies about you? Simple, you don't. The more attention you give their words, the more real those lies become in the eyes of others. The first step: don't validate their lies by reacting to them. Silence doesn't mean surrender, it means strength. Second, let your character do the talking. You don't need to defend yourself at every turn. Truth, unlike lies, doesn't beg to be believed. It simply reveals itself with time. And finally, this is crucial. Understand that those who spread lies expose more about themselves than they ever do about you. Their deceit, their drama, their need to twist the truth, it's all a reflection of their own weakness, not your worth. At the end of the day, false words are only powerful if you hand them power. So stand still, say nothing. Let the truth rise. Like smoke after fire, slow, silent, but impossible to ignore. Because those who build their lives on deception, they always lose in the end. Tactic. Word of 3. They play the victim now. Here's where things get even trickier. When people can no longer control you and lies don't work, they often switch to something even more manipulative. They play the victim. But this isn't innocent vulnerability, it's strategy. Instead of owning their behavior, they twist the story. They cast themselves as the one who's been hurt, wronged, misunderstood. Why? Because if they can't control you, they'll try to control how others see you. It's not about seeking justice, it's about avoiding responsibility. They'll exaggerate the situation, omit key facts, paint you as the villain in a movie where they always play the tearful hero. And here's where it gets dangerous. The more you try to explain yourself, the more guilty you look. You're angry, they're hurt. You speak up, they're under attack. It's an emotional trap. Imagine someone giving a flawless performance. Tears, trembling voice, a look of innocent confusion. And there you are, frustrated, trying to reason. Suddenly, you look like the problem. But here's the secret. If you walk onto their stage, you've already lost. Because the entire act relies on one thing, your reaction. True strength is stepping off the stage. Epictetus once said, "A wise man does not allow others to dictate his emotions." That's your shield. Emotional control. The moment you let their act affect your inner peace, you've handed them the script. But if you stay calm, detached, and let time do the explaining, the illusion falls apart. I remember facing someone like this. They violated a boundary again and again until I finally stood up for myself. But instead of apologizing, they flipped the narrative. Suddenly, they were the one shocked and hurt. They ran to others saying I had attacked them. And, just like that, I was painted as the villain. At first, I wanted to rush in, defend myself, explain every detail, but then I paused. I didn't argue, I didn't justify, I didn't feed the drama. I simply let my actions speak for themselves. And you know what happened? People started noticing. The truth, quiet but consistent, began to shine through. Because no matter how polished the performance, lies unravel. And real character always rises. So how do you deal with people who play the victim? First, don't engage. The more you argue, the more you become the villain in their story. Second, let their behavior reveal itself. The more they exaggerate, the more transparent they become. And finally, protect your energy. You don't owe anyone a part in their performance, but what if emotional manipulation isn't their last move? As we saw earlier, manipulators use victimhood not to find justice, but to control the narrative, and that only works if you give them an audience. So what's the best defense? Stay calm, stay silent, let the truth do what it always does, rise, because no matter how loud the performance, truth doesn't need a spotlight, it survives without applause. Tactic number 4, they try to isolate you, but manipulation doesn't always look like a direct attack. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, through whispers, half-truths, and planted doubts. When people realize they can't control you directly, they often go for something deeper, your connections. They start working behind the scenes, turning friends, colleagues, even family against you. Why? Because they fear your independence. If you're surrounded by supportive people, those who uplift you, they know they can't manipulate you. So what do they do instead? They try to cut the roots. Their goal is clear: separate you, make you doubt your relationships, weaken your sense of belonging. Because the more alone you feel, the easier you are to control. It's a tactic as old as nature itself. Think of predators in the wild. Wolves don't attack a strong herd. They isolate the weakest animal first, cutting it off from protection. Then they strike. Manipulators do the exact same thing. They don't confront you when you're supported. Instead, they create subtle conflicts, quiet suspicions, and emotional tension. They twist words, spread rumors, and slowly poison the minds of those around you, hoping to push you into isolation. But here's where Stoic wisdom steps in. Seneca once said, "Associate only with those who improve you. Avoid those who would pull you down." That's your compass. Don't cling to every relationship. Protect the ones that make you stronger. Distance yourself from those who manipulate, divide, or make you question your own worth. Because over time, the truth always becomes visible. Real friends, those who matter, will see through the lies, and those who turned against you, they were never meant to stay. I once knew someone who tried to quietly turn people against me. It began with small comments, subtle, slippery remarks like, "I don't know if you can really trust them." Then came the exaggerations, the twisted stories, the silent sabotage. At first I was angry. I wanted to confront them, clear the air, defend myself, set the record straight. But then it hit me. The more I fought, the more attention I gave them. And attention is what they craved. So I changed course. I focused instead on what mattered, nurturing the relationships that were real. I stayed consistent in how I showed up, in how I treated others. I let my actions tell the story. And slowly, everything shifted. People started seeing the difference. The ones who knew my heart, they stayed. The ones who chose to believe the noise, they weren't really mine to lose. So how do you deal with someone who tries to isolate you? First, stay calm. The more reactive you are, the more power you hand them. Second, invest in your true connections. Friendships built on trust and consistency don't collapse easily. But what happens when isolation doesn't work either, and they turn to more aggressive tactics? Real connections don't fall apart because of gossip. As we saw, those who truly know you won't be fooled for long, and those who are easily swayed, let them go, because at the end of the day, anyone who fears your independence will try to isolate you. But they can't break what is steady, grounded, and unshaken. So stay strong, stay rooted in truth, and never forget, genuine relationships can't be destroyed by someone else's lies. Tactic number 5. They challenge your confidence. When control, lies, and isolation don't work, manipulators often resort to something more subtle, but just as dangerous. They start targeting your confidence, not with insults or loud criticism. No, their tactic is quiet, strategic. They begin planting tiny seeds of doubt. They won't say, "You're wrong." Instead, they'll ask, "Are you sure that's the right decision? Do you really think that's going to work?" Or they'll raise an eyebrow at your plans, question your timing, your ideas, your abilities. Why? Because if they can make you doubt yourself, they get a foot back in the door. Self-doubt gives them leverage, and the more unsure you are, the easier you are to influence. That's their goal. But here's the truth. People who constantly challenge your confidence aren't trying to help you improve. They're trying to shake your self-belief. They want you to second-guess yourself, to come back to them for validation. Because once you start needing their approval, they're back in control. Imagine it like crossing a sturdy bridge. You know the bridge is safe. You've walked it before. But now, someone stands beside you, whispering, "Are you sure it'll hold? What if it collapses halfway?" You pause, not because the bridge is weak, but because they made you question something you already trusted. That's how confidence works. It's not about weakness, it's about distraction. Manipulators don't break your foundation, they distract you long enough to make you doubt it. So, what's the key? Recognize what they're doing and keep walking. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a shield. Epictetus once said, "A person's worth is not determined by external approval." True confidence doesn't come from people agreeing with you. It comes from within, from knowing your reasons, your values, your vision. The moment you stop seeking external validation and start standing by your own decisions, that's when you become unshakable. I remember someone in my life who questioned almost everything I did. No matter the decision, big or small, they'd raise an eyebrow, lean in slightly, and ask, "Are you sure? That sounds risky." At first, I explained, I tried to be reasonable. I laid out my logic again and again. But then I realized they weren't asking because they knew better. They were asking because they wanted me to hesitate. So one day, I stopped explaining. I looked them in the eye and simply said, "Yes, I'm sure." No justification, no debate. And you know what? They had nothing left to say. Because real confidence doesn't argue, it stands still. So how do you handle people like this? First, trust yourself. If your choice is grounded in logic and experience, don't let someone's doubt shake you. Second, stop over-explaining. The more you justify yourself, the more room they have to poke holes in your thinking. And finally, Remember this: doubt is contagious, but so is certainty. So, what happens when they realize confidence can't be broken? Either when someone can't shake your confidence, their next move is often more aggressive. They go after your emotions. Because when logic and subtle doubt no longer work, the last resort is provocation. Tactic number 6. They provoke you emotionally. This tactic is old, ancient even. When manipulators lose the ability to control you with clever arguments or twisted logic, they reach for the one thing that still might work: your emotions. They'll say things designed to sting. They'll bring up the past, throw out insults, exaggerate the present, and mock your principles. But it's not because they want clarity or resolution. It's because they want to make you snap. Why? Because if they can get an emotional outburst from you, they win. The moment you react, they get to play calm. They claim the high ground. They walk away saying, "See, I told you they were unstable." Suddenly, you're no longer the composed one. You're the aggressor. And they walk away, looking like the victim. This is the trap. And it's as subtle as it is dangerous. Think of it like this: your emotions are a flame. Their words, the wind. The more you react, the stronger the fire grows. But what happens when wind has nothing to feed? The fire dies. That's why staying calm, truly calm, isn't just a virtue. It's a weapon, because if they can't provoke you, they have nothing left to use against you. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your shield. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That's the principle. When they act with chaos, you answer with composure. When they expect rage, you offer stillness. I remember a time someone deliberately tried to bait me into an argument. They twisted the facts, dredged up old mistakes, and threw insults like darts. Each one was designed to hit a nerve, and honestly, I felt it, the heat rising. The temptation to hit back, to defend, to set the record straight. But I paused, I took a breath. I looked them in the eye and said with a calm voice, "Interesting perspective." That was it. No defense, no rebuttal, no argument, and in that moment they froze. They didn't know what to do because they had prepared for a fight, not silence. That's when I understood. Calm isn't weakness, it's unmatched power. So how do you deal with people who try to provoke you emotionally? First, recognize the game. If someone is trying to push your buttons, pause and ask, do they want a real conversation or just a reaction? Second, control your response. Feel your emotions rise, then breathe. Don't speak from impulse. Speak from clarity. And finally, walk away when it's not worth it. Not every battle deserves your energy. Some fights are best won by not fighting at all, because your emotions are yours. They belong to you, not to the person trying to control them. So when they throw flames, stay cool, stay distant. Let them burn themselves out while you walk away in silence. But what happens when none of this works, and they turn to their final, most desperate move? When emotional provocation fails, the last tactic they turn to isn't loud or aggressive. It's subtle, strange, and often unsettling. They stop fighting you and start copying you. Tactic number 7, they copy you. This one catches most people off guard. At first it feels harmless. You take a bold step, they follow. You share a new idea. Suddenly, they're presenting it like it was theirs all along. It seems like coincidence. But then it keeps happening. Over time, it becomes clear they're no longer competing with you. They're imitating you. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If someone can't defeat you, they may try to become you. Instead of forging their own path, they mimic yours, step by step, hoping to absorb your momentum without doing the inner work. But here's what they don't understand. Imitation can follow, but it can never lead. Think of it like the relationship between the sun and a shadow. The shadow only moves when the light does, but it will never create its own glow. That's what copying is, an empty reflection of something real. No matter how closely someone imitates your words, your ideas, your moves, they can't duplicate the essence that makes you, you. This is where Stoic wisdom once again becomes your compass. Seneca said, "Character, not imitation, defines a person. Your true worth isn't just in what you do, it's in how you do it, in the decisions no one sees, in the lessons your scars have taught you, in the authenticity that comes from living your own story." I remember someone who copied almost everything I did. Every achievement I earned, they tried to mirror. Every new step I took, they followed closely, sometimes even faster, hoping to beat me at my own game. At first, I was frustrated. It felt like my work was being stolen, my originality diluted. But then I noticed something. The more they copied, the clearer it became. They had no direction of their own, no vision, no foundation. They were just reacting to me. So one day, I changed everything. I switched my approach completely, took a path they never expected, and just like that, they froze. They didn't know what to do, because you can only copy what you understand, and they didn't understand the why behind my choices. That's when I realized something powerful. Imitation isn't flattery, it's confirmation. Confirmation that you're ahead. So, how should you deal with people who copy you? First, stop focusing on them. If they're copying you, they're already behind. Second, keep evolving. The more you grow, adapt, and create, the harder it is for anyone to keep up with you. And finally, remember, people who imitate do so because they lack the courage to be themselves. But copies always fade. Originality, true, grounded authenticity, always stands the test of time. And as we reach the final tactic, there's one more thing they may try when everything else has failed, when they can't outshine you and copying fails. There's one last thing they might try, standing on the sidelines, quietly hoping you fall. Tactic, great. They wait for you to fail. Not everyone who smiles at you is truly happy for you. Some people nod politely when you speak of your goals. They say, "That's great, I'm proud of you." But behind the mask, they're not waiting for your rise. They're waiting for your collapse. Why? Because your success highlights something they don't want to face, their own stagnation. Your growth becomes a mirror reflecting their lack of progress. And rather than level up, they'd rather see you trip. They don't clap because they believe in you. They clap because they want front row seats to your downfall. But here's where they miscalculate. True success, lasting success, doesn't depend on applause. It doesn't need their cheers, their validation, or their approval. It's like a tree in a storm. The shallow-rooted tree sways and breaks in strong winds, but the deeply rooted one, it stands still. No matter how loud the storm, it endures. That's you. The people hoping for your failure, they're just the wind. They blow hard, they make noise, but they only break you if you let them. Epictetus once said, Do not waste energy on those who hope for your downfall. Your energy should be invested in growth, not in proving doubters wrong. You don't need to defend your journey to those secretly hoping you'll give up. I remember someone like that. They acted supportive, smiled in front of others, but always dropped subtle doubts. Are you sure that's going to work? Or, most people fail at that, right? And when I hit a setback, they were quick to say, "See, I told you this wouldn't be easy." That's when I understood. They were never cheering me on. They were just waiting for the moment I'd stumble. So what did I do? I stopped explaining, stopped chasing validation. I poured everything into my progress and let the results speak for themselves. And when I finally succeeded, their silence was deafening, because some people don't want to see you rise. They want to see you break, retreat, or question yourself. But that's exactly why you must succeed. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove to yourself that no external force can define your worth. So, how do you handle people who hope you'll fall? First, ignore their expectations. They only have power if you start performing for them. Second, keep evolving. The more you grow, the more irrelevant their opinions become. And finally, understand this: nothing unsettles someone more than watching you rise after they were certain you'd fall. In the end, the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest, the most liked, or the one who explains the most. It's the one who refuses to be controlled, manipulated, or broken. Stay focused, stay grounded, and let your silence, your strength, and your success speak volumes. Because no matter what tactics they try, when you master yourself, you win. If this message spoke to you, comment below with "Stand your ground," and let me know which tactic hit home the most. And remember, the journey to self-mastery isn't easy, but it's the path worth walking. In the next video, we'll dive even deeper into how to remain unshakable, no matter what life throws at you. Until then, own your path, own your power. See you soon.